Hey there, this is Sherri Engel with Intracoastal Realty, and I'm here with David Massione today, and we are going to talk about where the market is. We're in October 2023, and what are we seeing, what's next, and what can we expect? So, David, do you have any thoughts on the mortgage end? Because, of course, everybody wants to know how rates are doing.
I believe rates are close to peaking out. That doesn't mean that they're going to drop right down right away. We need to see that the Fed's going to stop, which I think they may raise rates one more time, at least now. And then we need to see the economy slow down a little bit. You know, unfortunately for mortgage rates, a slowing economy is good. You know, it almost seems backwards. But I think we're near. I mean, we've gone from 2.75% to close to 8% in a very, very short time.
We sure have. And what a difference it makes for, let's say, a $400,000 buyer that could buy something at 3%, 4%, and now you're inching towards 8%. It's double. Your mortgage is double.
What's interesting is there are a lot of people out there that would buy houses, but they just can't afford them. Not the ones they want, or maybe not in New Hanover County.
True. Now, one thing that I do think we're going to see is right now things are a little bit more quiet than we're used to, which in a way is good. We're getting back to a healthy market. We're starting to get a little bit of inventory. Sellers don't have so much of a heavy hand on a buyer. It's still a seller's market, absolutely, but I believe that you can get a little bit of concessions or maybe some repairs versus before that was impossible. But I believe once rates do start to inch back down, there's going to be pent-up demand of people that are not in the market right now because they're not interested in an 8% interest rate or paying quite that much in their mortgage. So I think that's when we're going to go back to multiple offers, very possibly, and that's when homes will sell a little bit more than list.
Well, two comments about what you just went over. Anecdotally, I just saw a contract on DeLon Downing's desk. It was for $520,000, and the listing price was $530,000, and the seller had agreed to pay $10,000 worth of closing costs. So you're starting to see not necessarily full price offers anyway. I mean, maybe on some of the better properties or whatever, more desirable. And as far as what I'm telling people that can't afford a house, if even at 8%, 7.5%, if you can afford it now, buy it now. And if rates go up, you'll be happy that you bought now. If rates go down, you will refinance. Because if you wait till the rates come back down into the 6s or the 5s, all that pent-up demand, they're going to be competing against that pent-up demand.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of that pent-up demand just can't afford 8%, not the house they want.
Yes.
And the question is, will they be able to at 5%? We will see.
Yeah, as prices continue to go up. Well, there's a few things we want to talk about today. And one, there are certain things that you may hear in the news, and you always need to call a local expert just to make sure it's accurate, because if it bleeds, it leads typically. But one thing is, we've heard that we may see an increase in foreclosures. And there's a reason for that, because there was a moratorium where they couldn't allow banks to foreclose on properties.
Right.
So we will see an increase in them, but it's going to be so minor compared to where we've been in the past. I do know, I've got a stat here that, golly, of course, we were at our height back in
Is that 08?
08, really 09 and 2010. Oh, it was just a painful time.
Every third contract was a foreclosure or a short sale, maybe even half in some
Yes.
cases.
So right now, we had that foreclosure moratorium. So we are barely inching back up, and there will be a handful of foreclosures. But frankly, I would say if anyone gets foreclosed on, they've got just major family challenges, because most folks have enough equity in their home that they can at least liquidate it, if not short sell it. But I would say if they're getting foreclosed on, there could be a death and there's no one to deal with it.
Let's show the graph.
Well, I'm sorry it's not in a, I'm sorry it's not, it was supposed to print in color, but it did not. But yes.
I mean, that's pretty dramatic.
Yes, hold that up. So it kind of
Sure.
shows you that we started in 03, and back then things were a little bit, maybe this was probably average, and then we go into the Great Recession, and that's when things were really bad. And then they slowly started to go down and stayed down for a long time because the market slowly improved. And then lastly, we had this, this is where you couldn't foreclose,
right.
And now they're back up just a little bit. So if you do see a headline that foreclosures are increasing, it's because there was no other option.
It has to be a bad situation for someone to foreclose right now, because you're right, they do have the equity. Why would you just not put your house on the market? Back then people were underwater, and even at that time, the banks, a lot of them took their time. They put the foreclosure deed on, but then they wouldn't finish the process, because I think they were hoping maybe the market would come back as well. But right now, why would you foreclose on a $400,000 house if you only owe $300,000 on it? You would call Sherri Engel and put it on the market.
There you go. That's right. That's right. Call your local real estate expert, but I'd love the phone call. All right, let's move on. I think I'm going to skip the part about Airbnbs because
Sure.
I do think that our current market is a tad saturated with Airbnbs. However, I don't believe more people are going to be buying them right now because the numbers don't work with the current rates. Unless you're paying cash. Right. So I don't think that is that much of a deal. Another thing we've heard about, some people talking about how all these corporations are buying up properties, and apparently, according to John Burns Consulting, that more of the buyers are mom and pop type people, as in they're buying between, they own 1 to 9 properties versus the large stats of corporations purchasing properties.
Well, I mean, Tyler could probably answer this because he keeps up with that stuff, but there were a lot of corporations were buying properties in 08, 09, 10, like big, big billion dollar corporations. And obviously it turned out to be a good thing for them. I haven't kept up with what they're doing. If they're unloading them, you would think now would be a good time to unload them. Another thing that, and I know you and I hadn't talked about this, but I noticed this first. It was a Penton development over off of Pine Grove, the little brick houses, that he built those to rent. And then up in Apex, outside of Apex, where 2 of my children live, I've seen a lot of that. Brand new homes for rent,
Yes.
So the builders are like, let's go along for the ride.
It's honestly a very good business model.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a good thing. All right, let's see what else we're seeing. Okay, here's another one. So with inventory low, where are we going to find inventory coming up? And apparently 32% of current landlords plan to sell their properties in the next 2 years.
Wow.
So that is a positive for inventory coming up. And it's probably just a matter of life changes. They're ready to liquidate some of their assets. They're no longer wanting to be a landlord. It may be true retirement. Who knows? Or they're just simply tired of managing them. But
I'm doing a loan for someone right now. They can afford to keep the current home, even if they didn't rent the property. And to me, the whole reason they're keeping the property is because they have a 2 3/4% mortgage. And I'm thinking, and they're getting an 8% mortgage. And to me, even though I think the housing market is going to remain strong, is there a little froth going to come off the top? Maybe in some neighborhoods, maybe in some areas. I don't think in the South. I don't think they'll be hurt, but are we going to get 8, 10, 20% appreciation? Meaning, should they take the equity and go buy stocks or bonds? So it's only because of the interest rate, where I'm thinking, maybe take the money. And so I've seen that happen more and more, where people are keeping a house where 3 years ago they would not have chosen to become a landlord, and I think maybe they may choose not to be a landlord anymore shortly after they start. So I think we're seeing a little bit of that holding inventory back as well. People are not selling homes if they feel like they can manage it.
Well, I spoke with a buyer this past weekend, and they have a current mortgage of $1,800. Excuse my phone. They have a mortgage of $1,800 a month,
right? And
they can rent their house easily $2,800 to $3,000 a month. So even though they may move up because their family's grown and the husband's working from home and they need more space, it makes so much more sense if they can handle both is to hold on to their old house, make that $1,000 a month.
True.
In mortgage or in rent rather, and then they could even roll it into their new house.
True. Or they could buy bonds at 5% right now, with the equity. So that's what I'm saying, is that a lot of people are not considering other options. And to me, it's, to me, the biggest problem is inventory.
Yes.
So, another place that I think the inventory will come from, let's say all the people that bought new construction over the last 2 years, okay, and they're not at 2 3/4, 3%. They're at 5, 6, 7%. So they're a new couple. They went out to Leland, Brunswick County, bought a $300,000 house, and then rates do come back down to 5. Well, now they're not if they may be moving up. It's like, oh, we have another child on the way, so now it's time to move, and rates are at 5. So they're not trading in a low rate for a higher rate. I think that's where a lot of the inventory will come from, is the first resale of new construction homes.
That's interesting. I can certainly see that. I'll tell you one challenge we're having for resales is a lot of these large builders, whether it's Pulte or D.R. Horton, they have some mortgage rates that are like 5%, maybe 6%, and some buyers are choosing those homes because if they go with those large builders, mortgage companies, they can get those rates.
They're actually buying a forward commitment. They're spending millions of dollars to buy a block of money at a much, much lower. It's like paying points, but the builder's doing it. And it's not, I think the other day I think it was Bob Bates brought it up at the managers meeting over at Intercoastal. And he was talking about DHI, or D.R. Horton was giving the rates, DHI being the mortgage company. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, Bob, they're not paying. He was talking about the $10,000 in closing costs they'll pay. So 5 go to prepaids and closing costs, and 5 goes to points. I said, they're not getting 5% with $5,000. Like it would be like 15 points to get that, which they can do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't get you 5%. I mean, none of the people I sell loans to would buy a loan with that many points, but you can go do it on a very bulk level, big scale.
Hence the large builders doing that. Okay. All right. According to Jeff Tucker, who's a senior economist with Zillow, one thing the market did not expect was our 7+ mortgage rates, and maybe that's why we're getting a few more listings.
Probably.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might just say it's time to take the money in their house. I mean, if you're in a house that was worth $300,000 3 years ago and now it's worth $500,000, some people have to think about taking the money.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, especially if they're thinking about moving. I had some sellers, we actually closed today on a home, and they have gone from Brunswick Forest and to New York City, but ultimately he's going to be transferred to London. Right. So, it was job promotion, life changes, and selling.
Yep.
All right. Now, this is interesting. 70% of mortgage rates are less than 4%, and 90% are less than 5%. So that very will likely keep a lot of people from moving because it might be easier to add on to their house or just live with it versus having to move up and pay more.
I like to use my two older children as examples. My 2 younger have not bought houses yet. They live in Raleigh. The 2 older live in the same neighborhood just outside of Raleigh. And both of them probably bought a bigger first home than most people would have. They have good jobs, everybody. But I always encourage them. I'm like, go a little bigger. If you're happy with your job, go all out. Get one move out of the way. And neither of them did. And now one's 4 years in and the other's maybe longer than that, 5 years in and the other's 7 years in. They need a bigger home, but they have a 3% mortgage rate. And they're going to move. Whether the rates are 5 or 6 or 4, they're just the hassle of it is more the problem for them. Sure. And they love their neighborhood, but there's nothing in the neighborhood to move up to.
Mm-hmm. And no room to expand.
Right. So I think the rates, once everybody's over the shock, the people that can afford to buy houses will buy houses. Yes. I started when rates were at 13. My first mortgage was 13. The big deal about it is, or the big glaring factor is that the mortgage was $60,000.
That's the big difference of prices nowadays.
Right. So either rates are going to have to move, housing prices are going to have to move, or wages are going to have to move. And we know that the inventory it's not going to be housing. Maybe not in the South.
Yeah. Well, apparently over the last 5 years, the national average of home prices has gone up 57%.
Yeah. In North Carolina.
In North Carolina, it's 75%.
Well, Tyler, who's my handy dandy slicer and dicer of data, he basically will tell you, I'm ballparking, but I'm not exaggerating. Between new home sales, new construction, permits, and existing home sales, the South is almost 60% of all national activity.
Wow.
Yeah. I wonder if one day all the Southerners are going to migrate north once the North is empty.
But the problem is everyone moves here because we have such a wonderful climate and way of life. But yes, it could be. You never know. Things could change.
Having come from Alaska, I tell people we have alligators and palm trees, and I don't care if I see another snowflake as long as I live.
Today I was on College Road and I was behind a truck and there was a large alligator on the back, like a sticker. And when I got up at a traffic light, this is the guy that removes them, and he had wildlife removal and his phone number there. I was like, I'm glad that's not my job.
Yeah, you want to keep your dogs away from small dogs away from ponds, definitely.
Yes. All right, so first quarter of 1991 to second quarter of 2023, the percentage change in home prices is 297%.
So that's 32 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so 3 times.
3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen the next 30 years, especially with inflation being hotter right now? We haven't experienced real inflation in over 40 years.
So answer that question. What do you think?
About inflation?
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you why. Basically, the Federal Reserve was printing money for almost 15 years. And Tyler will tell you, I've always, since we did our radio show, I'm like, this can't go on forever. I was surprised how long it took for inflation to occur. And then when they pumped $3 trillion into the economy. I forget the giveaways during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
That was you had the gasoline was already there. That was the fire that ignited it.
Sure.
And it's going to be harder to put back in the bag. That's why we're not going to go back down to 3%. I'm hoping the 5s, maybe the high 4s, but it's not going to happen until the Federal Reserve gets inflation down to 2%. And we're at 4 right now from 9.
So we've got a ways to go.
Yes. So that doesn't mean rates can't come down. They won't bottom until the inflation is where the Fed wants it.
So more than likely, the days of 2s and 3s are just gone.
That should have never been there to begin with. We benefited from it, in a big way. But 0% interest rates in the history of money is it just doesn't happen.
Well, I'm going to have to say it. If you have a rate that low, it's free money. So if you can afford to keep the house and move up to what your next house is, I think it's a good long-term investment for your family.
Well, I used to tell people then, and this isn't really neither here nor there, but when people would come to refinance at 2 3/4, I would tell them, what about that big equity line over there? Let's combine the two. Oh no, the rate's really low. It's interest only. I said, it's an adjustable rate mortgage that will move every time the Federal Reserve moves rates. So if you have an old equity line that at one time was at 4, now its prime is at 8 1/4, and if you're at prime plus 1, it's at 9 1/4. Mm-hmm. And I would also tell people that were taking cash out, why don't you take a little more out? Well, I want to leave a little equity, and you can't take all your equity out in the kind of loans we do anyway. But I said, you will be able to get a higher rate risk-free in the future. I don't know when, but in the future, then you will be paying on the mortgage I get you. So if I had gotten you a 3% mortgage, you could buy 2-year treasuries right now at 5%. So it came true in 3 years.
Wow.
Yep.
Good advice. I like that. And that's another reason why you want to use an experienced expert. All right. So this is good. According to CoreLogic, second quarter equity report, quarterly gains added about $14,000 to each homeowner. But the average U.S. homeowner now has $290,000 in equity.
Wow.
So again, that's another reason why I do not believe we'll see a rush of foreclosures. I believe anyone getting foreclosed on is having some major life experiences, and there's no one else to handle it.
Mental problems.
Could be mental problems, health problems, all those things.
Or getting bad advice. People do get bad advice sometimes,
True. Yeah. All right. That's kind of obvious about having equity. It just gives you options. That's the good news. Okay, here's a kind of a fun fact. Apparently, because COVID made everyone distant so much, that nowadays, according to Vance, how do you pronounce that?
Vance Kariaji, I'm going to say.
Okay, Go Banking Rates, recent data shows that many baby boomers are relocating further away from home than they used to because they want to be closer to grandbabies. Life is short. Goodness gracious, we don't want to go through another pandemic and have to not be able to see our family and friends, and so they're moving closer. And I think that's part of some of the moves, and I've seen that myself.
I'm fortunate that all 4 of my adult children live in Raleigh, and all 7 grandchildren. We just had them all together up at Topsail Island on this weekend.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So unless they move away, I won't be one of those people that have to move after them.
Yes.
So
yeah,
let's hope they stay in Raleigh.
Well, speaking of Topsail Island, I was up there this past weekend as well, and wow, I love that place. I really think Topsail is a good buy.
I agree. We went up, we ate at Shaka Taco,
That place is awesome.
And then there was a little place right next to the Intercoastal office called the Salty Turtle Brewery.
Okay.
And I was like, this place is cool. I mean, the whole area,
Yeah, that Shaka Taco is on time. It's really, really good.
It was very good.
Okay, so right now, empty nesters are dominating our home sellers by a whopping 77%.
Wow.
Yeah. People are tired of the big house, I guess, and maintaining the yard and everything.
And there are probably people that have all cash too. So that's where some of our inventory may come from.
Yes.
It's going to be interesting to see when this inventory issue is no longer a problem. Because when you go back, that foreclosure chart that you saw, this is basically we're running about $1 million inventory right now, a million unit inventory. Back then in 2008, we had a $4 million inventory. I mean, these are numbers that I've gotten. It's been a little while ago, but these are relatively accurate. But the difference is that we have 14 million more households now. So the inventory is at a fourth of that peak, and yet we have 14 million more people out there that need to buy houses. So it's not something that's going to go away quickly.
No. And currently in New Hanover County, as of second quarter, we had 1.9 months of supply. So an average healthy market is 5 to 6 months of supply. So it's going to take, I bet it's going to be at least maybe at 2 months supply once we get third quarter results. I really think we've increased, but we needed to, for heaven's sakes,
Yeah, we need the increase. No question.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so the top 5 reasons why a seller sells their home in our current market is, one, they want to be closer to family and friends. That's 21% of them.
Right.
Some of them are moving for retirement. That's about 11% of them. Maybe the neighborhood is less desirable, another 11%. Where the home is too small, about 10%, and change in family situation, which could be a marriage or a divorce or growing family.
Another child, yeah.
Yeah, another child. And that source is from NARS.
Overall, it appeared, I like this one, the reduction in supply has outweighed the decrease in demand. So that's it. I mean, even if demand is falling, you've got supply falling faster than demand. Basic economics.
Yes.
It really is supply and demand.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so high mortgage rates have slowed additional price surges, with monthly increases returning to regular seasonal averages, which is 3 to 5%. So our home prices are growing, but the appreciation, I believe our mass appreciation is done. It is done. It is done. It should have been done last year, but obviously we have enough demand that we have seen more of an increase this year. Overall, according to Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Services, 2023, we're going to see an overall increase of 3% in home prices. 2024 will be about 2%, 25 about 3%, in 2026 about 3.5%, and then 2027 about 4%. So what their predictions are is we're not going to see prices go down. We'll just slowly see them inch up. That is good. That is healthy.
And it will keep people from speculating.
Yes.
Which you had a lot of that. You had a lot of that in 2008 or before 2008, the problem in 2008. And the big difference that I like to point out to people, because there are all of these numbers we've gone over have made it clear that we're not going to see a plunge in home prices. And we're a year and a half into the Federal Reserve raising rates, and we have not seen a plunge in home. We've actually seen them go up. So, the problem back then that everybody needs to keep in mind, it was bad lending that created the problem. There were just people that should not have been able to buy houses that were able to because of the bad lending standards of the time. And we are nowhere near that kind of lending standard right now. It's much, much tougher to get a mortgage now than it was in 2008. We're just not going there. It's not going to happen.
Well, that's a good thing, because that was so difficult on so many families. Yep. All right. So lastly, in Eastern North Carolina, I think we have our new normal for pricing. I've had sellers in the past that said, oh, I'm selling my house because I want to cash out, thinking that prices were going to drop. And we're certainly not seeing that. But the beauty of being a homeowner is it certainly causes our communities to be stronger, enables families to thrive. There's some facts that we could talk about another time about homeownership and what it does to the communities around it. It's pretty remarkable how much stronger they are.
And I want to remind myself next time we talk about it, because Tyler showed me some numbers about home ownership. And, there are people that believe everybody should be able to buy a home, that home ownership does go up at certain periods with low interest rates and so forth. But if you look back over time, the home ownership has stayed in a very narrow band, like going back 50 years. It's just, there's certain people that are going to buy homes, and there are certain people that are not going to, or that just can't, and that those numbers aren't going to change. No. Some people just don't want to, but I think it was somewhere in the 60s. We'll get those numbers, because it's very interesting. It's pretty constant over time. I'm
thinking Tyler might need a microphone so he can chime in with some fun facts when he wants to. I think we need to do that.
He's my research guy too.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Alrighty, so I say we ought to just wrap up.
Sure.
Overall,
It's great information.
yeah, it's good information. And at the end of the day, if you see these headlines that we've got more foreclosures, we've got new inventory floods the market, or home prices are no longer seeing the rate of appreciation, that's why. There's always, you need to get really the facts behind it, because they're going to shout from the mountaintops anything that sounds scary.
Exactly.
To have a little clickbait. But at the end of the day, I do think, at least here in North Carolina, we are looking pretty good and pretty solid, and just need to keep working and striving and
Just keep working.
keep working.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Tyler. Thank
Thank you, Sherri.
Enjoyed it. Thank
Until
you,
next
David.
time.
That's right. Thanks.